I'm really delighted to have been invited to participate in this meeting, and I regret enormously that I'm unable to be with you in person today for this session. Introducing the International Prevention Research Institute, we are a not-for-profit research institute. We were established 10 years ago. We're in our 10th year. We work closely with our foundation, the World Prevention Alliance, where we focus all our research activity in low resource countries, and we became a part of a university in 2013 when we created the University of Strathclyde Institute of Global Public Health at IPRI. In 2017 we signed an important memorandum of understanding with the International Alliance of Patient Organisations, and we believe that the role of patients' organisations is morphing rapidly from its initial lobbying focus to taking on a much more involved and proactive role, from participating in the design of clinical trials to advocacy in the design of healthcare organisation and delivery. This we find extremely important because I believe that the future of healthcare is going to be largely determined by patients and the patient voice. IAPO is a unique organisation. Its membership is not individual based, it's based on organisations from around the world. At the last count that I've got, there was 276 member organisations representing 71 countries and 51 disease areas. It's the most powerful voice that you can get in uniting the patient organisations and the patient voice as we go ahead. The concept of our association with IPRI and IAPO is that IPRI will help to improve the quality of the science-based evidence that IAPO needs so much, and through IAPO we can have the patient voice in every single study that we try to do and we try to implement. This graphic shows here the changes in the world population, and in the blue you can see the increase which is taking place in the low resource countries, and the bit in the orange in the bottom is the population of evolution in what we would call high resource developed countries. The future of healthcare absolutely depends on the future of demographics, and this is extraordinarily important because what we can see here is between 2008 and 2010 a growth in the world's population from just over 5 billion to arriving just now in 2030 about 8.5 billion. Not only is the population growing, the population is growing older. You can see this bulge which is taking place in middle age, and as the population ages there's more and more and more chronic disease which occurs because of the strong link between the risk of any chronic disease and the ageing of the population. With the highest rate of population growth, Africa is expected to account for more than half of the world's population growth between now and the middle of this century. And during this period, populations of 28 African countries are projected to more than double. By 2100, 10 African countries are projected to have increased by at least 5-fold. Angola, Burundi, Democratic Republic of Congo, Malawi, Mali, Niger, Somalia, Uganda, United Republic of Tanzania and Zambia. And what this means is, and these are data from the United Nations Populations Division, can see that the grey area is the population projections, the white area is what's already happened, and you can see that importantly by about 2040 the population of Nigeria will be greater than that of the United States, and by the end of the century the population of Nigeria will be very close to the population of China, which will start to decline in about 20 years' time. The next slide shows a very important change which is going to take place, and it's the population by region. So at the beginning, in 1950, the population of Africa was roughly the same as the population of North America, Central Latin America, Europe. But by the end of this century, the huge growth in the population of the world is going to be in Africa. And by the end of the century, the population of Africa will be very close to the population of Asia, And remember that Asia currently is India, China and Indonesia and many other large populations accounting for its current population. So there's going to be huge demographic changes around the world. And many populations in high-resource countries have straightforward access to high-quality medical services. In populations with universal health coverage, large proportions of the population also have an additional private health insurance just to ensure that they've got rapid access and access immediately to everything they would need to treat their condition. We started to look at the problem of oncology worldwide, and we published this report in 2013, The State of Oncology Worldwide. And in it, we see very clearly at the beginning that we're more interested not so much in the little molecules and the genetics and those little bits and pieces, but we're much more interested, and the next slide shows we're much more interested in people. Because cancer is about people, diabetes is about people, disease is about people, and that should be our #1 priority. Up until recently, when we looked at publications, reports on the global disease situation, they were and continue to be essentially statistical compilations, particularly when related to lower resource regions. What we must never ever forget is that these statistics are just human beings with the tears wiped away. Behind every single statistic, there's one patient, there's more patients, there's patients and their families, and essentially all these statistics are just human beings with the tears wiped away. We complain that we have to wait in high-resource countries with a delay to go and see a general practitioner, to get an appointment to see him. We forget that in the real world, the big world out there, 57% of the population of Uganda never see a health worker in their entire lifetime. We then created the World Breast Cancer Report, which again we published in 2013. We know there are many reports from lower income countries, notably Africa, where patients only seek medical attention with the breast cancer is at an advanced stage and is frequently spread to other parts of the body, stage 4 disease. The prognosis is poor, and the only treatment option is palliation. So what we did was we had a very small survey of a number of countries, and we looked at the stage distribution of breast cancer at presentation around the world. And you can see, for example, in Kenya, if you go down here to Kenya, then you can see that 100% of women with breast cancer presented at either stage 3, advanced breast cancer, or stage 4, metastatic breast cancer, on their first visit to the hospital. In these patients, cure is not possible, and palliation is all that we can offer these patients in these circumstances. We can see that in high-resource countries, the great majority of disease is early disease. Late-stage disease is quite rare. But as you go to the poorer countries, the lower-resource countries, you can see very clearly that the majority of patients first present when the disease is not curable. This is a very typical picture in high-resource countries. If you've got the eye of a pathologist, if you've got a magnifying glass and the eye of faith, you can see a tiny tumour here about 0.6 centimetres in diameter. The reality is that patients in low-resource countries present with breast cancer like this, or like this, and this is in a National Cancer Institute in a low-resource country, or a variety of different patients with different diseases, but the concept is the one thing that unites them all in low-resource countries is that the great majority present with very advanced disease where cure is not possible. And the next slide shows it's not only occurring in adults, it also occurs in children. And you can see we can do miracles with patients who present like that, but only if the parents actually care about the child. Over half patients with cancer in high-resource countries require radiotherapy, and half of those again require a second course of radiotherapy. However, most low and medium resource countries have limited access to radiotherapy, and over 30 African countries have no radiotherapy machines at all. In Africa, the supply of radiotherapy is 1/5 of current needs, and there's a shortage of 7,000 radiotherapy machines for low and middle income countries. And this radiotherapy is the very basic of cancer care. When we looked at the whole of the situation in our State of Oncology report, it was easy to come to the conclusion that Sub-Saharan Africa is experiencing a rapid growth and ageing of its population currently, and this will continue well into the future. With increasing control of infectious disease and progress against HIV/AIDS, the burden of cancers and other non-communicable diseases will increase. Please stop calling them non-communicable disease. Let's call them chronic disease, because non-communicable disease gives the impression to politicians and administrators that this is a disease which can be cured, and cured in a way that infectious diseases like measles and chickenpox can be cured. But these non-communicable diseases are chronic diseases. Once you've got them for life. Africa is not well placed to deal with the current epidemic, never mind being in a position to think of how to deal with what's going to happen in the future. There are 55 countries in the world which do not have a single radiotherapy machine, and 30 of these countries are in Africa. You can see here those countries where it's completely coloured in white. They do not have a single radiotherapy machine. In addition, most countries have one machine, but frequently when you go there to see the machine, it's broken down. This is the situation in Uganda. It made the first front page of the BBC News website on the 8th of April 2016, where the one radiotherapy machine they have in Uganda, the national cancer machine, broke. And that was in April 2016, and now we've got a new one online. It started working on the 19th of January 2018, which is terrific news. But what happened to those patients who needed radiotherapy in the 2 years that the machine was not working? So apart from the radiotherapy machines, there are 29 countries in Africa where the importation of opioid drugs is forbidden. We produced a report called The State of Oncology in Africa, where we interviewed a very brave lady called Jovia, and this is Jovia's story.
So we're going to visit Jovia. She's 20 years of age. She has full-blown HIV/AIDS and cervical cancer. She's become really ill in the last month. She's very near end of life. So hospice has been visiting her very regularly to make sure that she's comfortable and peaceful, and that she has enough morphine and food and money for supplies. So we're here today with Nurse Rose Light, who is her main carer, and to check on her.
Yeah, my grandmother.
Your grandmother was named Jovia.
Yeah.
And you were born here in Kampala.
Yeah. There's a lot of dust, fake houses, a lot of diseases, everything. So, but me, I love Kampala because I grown up from Kampala.
How old are you?
Me, now, 29.
29.
Yeah.
And how old's your daughter?
Now she's becoming 14.
14.
Me? Yeah, I have.
What kind of cancer do you have?
I don't know exactly. Maybe I say cervix.
Cervix cancer?
Yeah.
You're taking morphine?
Yeah, I'm taking morphine. If it's good, before getting over the pain, before getting over, I call my friend here. They bring for me some. Yeah. I don't want to miss life, my dear. I don't want to miss everything. You people, I don't want to miss you. I want to stay here looking after my child. I went to do some works because I'm still young. Yeah. Not even to look after him. But even these legs are paining me, but slowly. Yeah. This medicine are helping me very much. Okay. After 4 hours, I take 4 milliliters. So even I thank God for that, because I didn't know that I'll get it that I thank you people to come praying for me, to support me. And because I didn't know I would get to you people. Oof, that brother of mine, and there is another one for my daughter, but I'm the one looking after them. And you people me. I don't have someone who look after me. I don't have someone who care for me except you people. And people in an area maybe. But others I don't have. My mom died when I'm 4 years. She died when my mom is delivering him.
So apart from radiotherapy, apart from palliative care, there are 600 drugs on the World Health Organization list of essential medicines. 44 are used to treat cancer, 38 are chemotherapeutics, and 6 are hormonal therapies. There's only 37 countries in Africa which adhere to the WHO list. The other countries have got nothing at all. In those 37 countries, the median number of chemotherapeutics adapted for national formulas is only 15 out of 44. This means that a substantial number of cancer patients do not have legal, affordable access to very minimal anti-cancer therapies. It goes without saying that cancer can only be a treatable disease if the treatment is available. And it's a tragedy that for many, many, many people in Africa with cancer, there's no treatment available. And not only is there lack of treatments, the delivery of cancer chemotherapy in Africa is further hindered by the widespread lack of healthcare professionals and laboratory facilities available to monitor the impact of chemotherapy on patients. Finally, there's a tremendous lack of doctors available, lack of oncologists. I'd like to introduce my very, very good friend, Leo Masamba. Leo is the only medical oncologist in Malawi for a population of 17 million people. There's no radiotherapy in Malawi. There's no specialist surgery in Malawi. There's only Leo to look after all the patients with cancer in a population of 17 million. We can't escape from the fact that it's bad to have cancer. It's worse to have cancer if you're poor. The gap between the rich and the poor, between the highly educated and the little educated, and the north-south divide is substantial, and it's set to continue to grow. We make steady progress in oncology in high-resource countries, but not all patients have the benefit of this progress. In the low-resource countries, cancer mortality is high due to the advanced stage of presentation and the absence of appropriate diagnostic and treatment modalities and facilities. It's not only cancer, it's all chronic diseases which are affected. In high-resource settings, diabetes is a manageable condition, but this is not the case in the low-resource settings. People in Africa who've got diabetes are required to spend half of their annual income on getting treatment for their disease. The life expectancy of people in Malawi with diabetes who require insulin is 1 year compared to having a normal life expectancy if it's well managed in the high-resource countries. So to summarize and to conclude, the future of medicine will be determined by demographic changes, and the patient voice will be an increasing determinant of health policy in the coming years. In high-resource countries, patients have access to extraordinary levels of healthcare. In low-resource countries, medical services are scarce, access is extremely limited, survival and quality of life is very poor for patients. In the 21st century, this situation is intolerable and demands action. IAPO and its membership are a key element to forging and changing health policy, and coordinated action to help patients living in countries at all resource levels is a major priority. We don't need to go back and get a treaty or get laws or get declarations from the World Health Organization or the United Nations. It already exists. There's an international covenant on economic, social and cultural rights, which should be invoked as the basis for action. This was voted by the United Nations in 1966 and entered into force in January 1976, and 166 countries have signed the treaty. This multilateral treaty provides that state parties to the covenant recognise the right of everyone to the enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health. Article 12.2 contains important determinants of the right to health, such as prevention and treatment of diseases essential for the enjoyment of the right. The legal basis to do something about that exists. We've seen the challenges that are faced not only in high-resource countries, but particularly in the low-resource countries, in providing adequate health care for patients with disease. There is a strong need for leadership, and it's up to you, ladies and gentlemen, as part of IAPO, and IAPO is the leading organisation, to determine future healthcare policy and to achieve that and help patients with disease all over the world.